Hi everybody, I'm DJ Sixsmith. Welcome to Sit Down. Special guest in the building, director Terry Gilliam. How are you, sir?
How are you?
It's a pleasure to meet you.
It's a nice time early in the morning. The sun has gone in, so we're in a warm studio. It feels cozy.
Yeah, getting you first thing in the morning, talking through everything. First of all, congratulations on the movie.
Thank you.
It is finally here.
Yep.
It is something that you've worked on for a very, very long time, and I'm sure you're proud after everything you've been through to get this to the screen.
I mean, 30 years is a long time, but eventually, and I don't even know if we got it right after 30 years.
But I feel like it's
we got it made.
It's quintessentially you, though. Like it's your sense of humor, your type of movie, and I'm sure it's cool that it's all come together at this point. Yeah,
well, that's the main thing, is just to have actually achieved it after that long, because people all around me said, you know, walk away from it, give it up, be reasonable, concentrate on the career. I've never had a career. So that's one of the reasons I charged ahead. I don't like reasonable people telling me to be reasonable.
Well, guess what? As a result, you get to do your thing.
Yeah.
And so if you don't call it a career, what do you call it then?
I just do one at a time. And if I manage to survive and get one film made and then the next film, that's great. I've gotten away with fooling people for so long. I count myself very lucky.
Well, love the shirt that you got on there. It's
yes.
Perfectly on brand.
There we go.
There you go.
Sell, sell, sell.
Yeah, you got to do it. So what fascinated you with Don Quixote in general?
Oh, he's one of the great characters of literature. I mean, the man who refused to accept the banality of the world. You know, he went mad reading books on chivalry and knighthood and maidens being rescued, and he sets out into the world to make the world like that. Of course, he constantly fails. So it's a series of almost triumphs crashing to the ground. Up! It's his resilience that I really love about Quixote, and his unwillingness to let the general consensus of what the world is dominate his view of the world.
And you put Toby in there as well, and he's able to just kind of break things up, and even just his sense of humor and everything, I feel like is cutting and perfect for this. So how did you develop that character as well?
Oh, you mean Toby?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we wrote it. The idea was that to try to have a modern person thrown into Quixote's kind of world.
This crazy world.
Yeah. And how he deals with it. It's really, and in a sense, Toby is like Dr. Frankenstein. He creates a monster because he made this small film years ago when he was young and enthusiastic and optimistic and pure. And what that film did was completely change, possibly destroy a lot of people's lives, and particularly the character that Jonathan Pryce is playing as Quixote. He was a little shoemaker in this little village, and he got to play Quixote. And in the course of playing Quixote, he slowly began to believe he was Quixote. And when we find him in the movie now, he's being taken around to fiestas. He's in the back of a truck with a dirty sheet where they're projecting the little movie, and Quixote has to keep doing the movie again and again. It's kind of like what I'm doing here now that I'm promoting the film.
Absolutely.
I keep talking to people saying the same thing again and again and again. So you have to be very careful what you write.
Definitely. So you have a very unique sense of humor. Where did you get your inspiration originally? Like all the way back, you know, take me to the very beginning.
I suppose, well, I grew up in the country to begin with. That was great. And we didn't have a television, but our neighbors did. And I remember the Show of Shows with Sid Caesar, Mel Brooks, who wrote those, and Carl Reiner. And there was also Ernie Kovacs, who was brilliant. I mean, Ernie Kovacs was basically a Czech, not when you signed, you know, a Czechoslovakian, and his sense of humor was totally surreal. It was wonderful. He even could do his own commercials on his show, and he'd do things like Dutch Master's Cigar, and he does a big western where the two guys face off on the street, guns blaze, bow, bow, bow. The bad guy drops, the good guy, whoosh, and goes into the bar, and as he gets in the bar, he lights up a Dutch Master cigar, and out of 100 holes in his body, smoke comes, and he falls over dead. Brilliant. And so it's that kind of absurdist humor is really what it is. And then of course the Goon Show that came out of England, Spike Milligan and Peter Sellers. It was absurdist is the key word really in all of it. And it's just looking at the world and the people in it and just realize how ridiculous we are.
It really is ridiculous. And even for you, like a lot of your background is in cartoons as well. And the absurdity in cartoons, how did that enter its way into your life as well?
Well, I mean, I could always draw. As a kid, I just drew, and I started doing cartoons because it was an easy way of impressing people. I could sit and draw something funny, and they say, "Wow!" If I had sat down to try to read a book or write a book, and say, look at this, I just wrote Moby Dick. You think they'd be as excited? No, I could draw a caricature of you and you'd think, wow, what a cool guy.
It's amazing what resonates with people. You know, something deep like that, they're like, yeah, okay, but this absurd thing, even for you, like with Monty Python, like all these years later, people are still talking about it. Like that must be crazy for you, like just you and your friends messing around, your sense of humor, like it must be an awesome thing.
Well, I actually learned a lot because an American coming to Britain and really getting into British humor, which is different than American humor.
What are the differences?
Well, in a very simplistic way, I think the Brits are very good at laughing at themselves. Americans are very good at laughing at other people.
Yeah,
That's the
we
difference.
like to do that, yeah.
And I love the fact that the Brits can be very self-deprecating, and they just find they are part of the world that is ridiculous. It may have something to do with the loss of empire. You know, in 50 years, they'd gone from the biggest empire the world had ever seen.
That has an impact on you.
Yeah, a little island is what's left. And it's getting smaller, that island. If we leave Europe, it'll be, we might as well go to the Caribbean.
And it's like a darker sense of humor, too. And it really takes a lot to impress these people. We had Russell Howard here, he's a British comedian, and he said, like, if you're going to get a standing ovation there, you really have to nail it. Whereas, like, he'll come here to America, and he's walking in, he's getting a standing ovation. That's kind of it in a nutshell right there.
It's kind of that. I mean, it's a very sophisticated sense of humor because it's subtle. It's not as direct as America. America is very good at taking a sledgehammer and say, you find that funny? Bonk!
Hitting you right over the head with it. And I think it's cool that you've been able to navigate both, just in terms of your life experiences. And even though you may not look at it as a career, the way that you've gone about things one after the other, you've definitely been intentional in the way that you've gone about things, wouldn't you say so?
I think I've been lucky because what I did, and very early on, was close all the doors to the things I didn't want to do.
Which was what?
Which was let somebody else tell me what to do.
I'm going to do it my own way.
That's the advantage of a cartoon. All I needed was a piece of paper and a pen. I had complete control. And so when you start working like that, you don't want other people to tell you what to do. I'm happy if somebody says, we've got 4 pages in this magazine, can you fill it up with cartoons about something? That's great, I'm in control. And films, I was always very frightened about. I wanted to get into films, but the idea they're so expensive, and you have to involve yourself with so many other people who have their own ideas what the film should be. So I really didn't get into it, but because of the success of Python, we were in a position when people were giving us money to make a movie, and there we were, complete control, and Terry Jones and I were the ones that wanted to be a film director, so we said, anybody named Terry gets to direct, and the others agreed.
I'm sure you had the automatic green light at that point. You know, people were coming to you, people had ideas. I mean,
that's the kind of lucky situation to be in, because I know so many other people who ended up directing films where they've worked their way up from T-boys to just groveling, doing whatever to get into it. And we were just in that position where, here's the money, make a film, and direct it if you want to. That's fantastic.
Right, so you've been on that extreme, and then you've been here where money isn't coming right off the bat, and you've dealt with that as well. So it's just a really fascinating time for the industry, because even somebody like you, financing is not an easy thing. Emilio Estevez was here. He's trying to get his movie made. He's not getting the financing he needs, but the fact that you're able to cut through that and make something you want, like, there's a lot to be said about that in 2019.
No, but it's like with the Quixote, because we were on it for so long because we couldn't get the money to make it. That was the problem. We could get X amount, but I knew we needed that amount. And it was only the final go-round, and there's my daughter, Amy, who was one of the producers, who met a lady, and she had a company called Alacran, and she wanted to see the film finished, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, sure.
And it was like Cinderella going to the ball. The fairy godmother comes in, bing, you're going to the ball, Terry.
I mean, they had a documentary about this. They had you guys nailed into the ground, and you guys are still able to do it. So
it's just, I guess patience is the only thing I've learned.
Yeah, definitely, and you need it in this industry. And I think it's also interesting, you're doing things on such a grandiose scale. And films aren't made in the same way. So what do you miss the most about the way that films were once made in such a large-scale way? I
don't know. I don't miss it because I keep doing it.
Right. Well, I mean, you're one of the few,
I do it with limited funds.
Right.
And what that sometimes does is force you or push you into making decisions you wouldn't normally make.
Like
and you find a solution around the lack of money.
Okay.
I can't do specific things, but I can. If we go back to Baron Munchausen, the adventures of Baron Munchausen, we got into a situation where it was all predicted that we were going to be millions over budget. The insurance company came in and said, the Baron will not go to the moon. I had written this huge sequence on the moon. It was like a Cecil B. DeMille moment.
Oh, wow.
Thousands of people on the moon all losing their heads during the eclipse of the moon. And Sean Connery was going to be king of the moon. Basically, it was 2,000 people. Big. And when we got into this trouble with the budget going out of control, they said, not going to the moon. And I was insisting that the Baron would go to the moon. So we just removed 3 zeros. From 2000, we had 2 people on the moon instead. And one was Robin Williams.
Yeah.
And the other thing, on the moon, when they arrived, we had all these drawings for all the big sets we were going to build. It was serious stuff. And again, no money. So all I did was blow up the drawings of the sets to about 2 meters high, about like that. We colored them in with felt tip markers, mounted them on plywood, and moved them like this. And so all of them were moving. And it's better than what it would have been had we built it. And because had we done what my plan was, it would be just like every other big film.
Sure.
This is more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you remember about working with Robin?
Great. Robin was the best. First one was Munchausen, and he's so incredibly funny. Robin was one of those most extraordinary people I met, I think, because it was like he had an antenna. Every idea, every thought the world has ever known would come in. He could use it all, and then he would turn it around upside down, inside out, and come up with something completely new.
Right.
And it was like that every day with him. And so we did Munchausen, had a great time, and then Fisher King was... He was even more beautiful in Fisher King because he was much more controlled.
Yeah. Who are other people you've worked with that you've really been proud to work with?
Oh, most of them. I mean, Jeff Bridges in the case of Fisher King. Jeff was just beautiful. He's just one of the great actors. He never looked like he's acting.
Yeah,
it's
just
all
very
real.
natural.
Yeah, and it's there. And he was the trick to keeping Robin and myself from floating off into the stratosphere. He was the grounding
You need
thing.
somebody to bring you back to center.
And that was Jeff. And it was like that. Johnny Depp and Benicio on Fear and Loathing. That was just extraordinary. Funny enough, they're remaking it, I guess, high def version that's going to come out sometime this year.
Awesome.
And so I was grading it just a couple of weeks ago with no sound, just the image. And it was wonderful, because I never look at my movies, and I was so amazed by it. This is crazy, we're wonderful. We were young and really inventive, as opposed to being old and desperate.
Well, what's old is new again, so I mean, it's a perfect time to bring something like that back, you know?
And we got Life of Brian coming out again.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think is it the 18th of this month, something like that.
Oh, wow,
it's
that's
going to
cool.
be re-released.
Yeah.
Which is again something that I think the world needs to watch again. It's very much about now, even though we made it 30 years ago.
That's the incredible thing about art, is that it can be 30 years in the past, but you put it right here and today, and you need to hear that message.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a whole audience that hasn't even been exposed to it yet.
So when Eric Idle says to the rest of the gang, I want you to call me Loretta. Why do you want to be called Loretta? I want to be a woman. Why do you want to be a woman, Stan? Because I want to have babies. You can't have babies. You don't have a womb. Where are you going to keep the fetus? In a cardboard box? This is very much about the world we're living in right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, The Man Who Killed Don Quixote coming out. What do you want people to walk away thinking when they check it out?
I don't really care. I just want them to come away with their own experience. It's kind of like that. When I make a movie, I know what I think I'm doing, but what I love about most of my movies, people come out with such divergent views of what they've just experienced. I just hope they all experience something that they haven't seen before, that surprises them, and maybe takes them in directions they don't normally think. That's, I think, my function, is try to open windows so people look at the world freshly.
Well, you opened a bunch of windows with this. I really enjoyed the film. Terry, it's been an absolute
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you very much. The Man Who Killed Don Quixote coming out on Wednesday. We'll see you next time here on The Sit Down.
Bye.